my safety, everything that is said in this video is for entertainment purposes only and should only be treated as such, entertainment.
Hey guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. It has been a minute since I've been on here. The last video that you guys got from me is an explanation of why I've been gone for the past couple of months. I went through like essentially a 4-week journey with my top teeth. So as you guys can see, I am now finally showing my teeth. For the past 2 years, a little over 2 years, I've been on social media. I do not show my teeth. It's just a thing. You can go back. If you've seen my teeth, it was by accident, not because I meant to. Also, just a little side note, I don't have lashes on right now because I'm about to wash my face and I'm gonna do some lash extensions, so please just bear with me. But I wanted to come back with the videos that made this channel what it is. Obviously, a good old-fashioned story time. So this story is one that you guys have requested and requested and requested and requested. I don't even know, God, if I was to go back through my comments section, there are probably hundreds of requests for this video because I have mentioned this specific video to you guys a bunch. And I've always said, oh, I'm gonna tell it, I'm gonna tell it, I'm gonna tell it, I'm gonna tell it. And the reason why I haven't told it is because number one, it's just quite traumatic. This whole experience was extremely traumatic for me. Also, I was very, very deep into my addiction during this time. So obviously that had quite a bit to do with why I was finding myself in this situation to begin with. But this is how I got myself out of spending 20 years in prison. Let's get into it. So not at the end of my addiction, but towards the middle of my addiction, I had met this girl. I've told stories of her before. I'm not going to give a specific time frame to protect her identity. And also we're obviously going to change her name and we're going to call her Cindy in this video. Cindy and I met while working with one another. And when she and I first met, I was in my addiction. She was sober at the time. So she had been an addict previously, but was in recovery when I met her. And we ended up like drifting apart for a little while because I ended up going through a divorce and moving to a different county and everything else. And I ended up going back to the place where we worked together. And that's how she and I would come back into contact with one another. Now, when she and I came back into contact with one another, she had admitted to me that she had relapsed. Now, at the time when I first met Cindy and when we reconnected the second time, I was not an intravenous drug user. I went straight from swallowing pills to using drugs intravenously. If you do not know what intravenous drug use is, I will have just a definition for you guys on the screen. But essentially I was using a, let's see, what word could I use on YouTube to not get in trouble? A shot. We'll just say it that way. So this first in particular night that me and Cindy start working together again, she asked me if I want to get high. I say yes, obviously. I was in my addiction, so obviously I wanted to get high. I had no idea that she did drugs this way. This is an important part of this. I had no clue that she did drugs this way. So she ends up telling me that what I was taking wasn't strong enough for her. And so I didn't know anybody who sold what she was looking for. This is going to be a trigger warning for people in recovery. We're going to be talking about the ways drugs are used. We're going to be talking about specific drugs and just recovery, relapse, everything. So if anything recovery related or relapse related or drug use related is triggering for you, I would skip this video and come back the next time. She ends up telling me that we have to go to this other city to get this specific drug that she uses, which was Opanis. This is how I was introduced to Opanis. And I knew nobody, so we ended up driving to this other city in Tennessee that's about 45 minutes away from where I live. I don't know my way around. I don't know anybody up there, like nothing. So we end up getting to this city and we go to this. So the thing about this city is, yes, there's like shopping and stuff like that, like in the main city. But if you know anything about about cities with inside of Tennessee is that people don't live near these shopping areas. There's like a bunch of shopping areas inside of Tennessee, but everybody lives in the outskirts. And this particular city is like one of the worst in Tennessee for like back roads that are like 15 miles long. Like it could tell you that it's gonna take you 2 hours to get somewhere in this city, and you'll be like, what? Like that city is only like 30 minutes away from me. But when you get there, you end up going down this one lane, like 30-mile road, like crazy. So we end up going way back into the hills of this town. I'm talking, we're going up into the mountains. There's no service, no street lights. You can't see the city. It's complete and utter darkness. You are surrounded by the mountains of Tennessee. That's it. We go back down this long gravel driveway. And I notice as we're going down this driveway, there's like a bunch of litter, just like a bunch of trash. And it also kind of looks like a car junkyard. Like there's a bunch of tires and just old abandoned cars and just a bunch of shit, just all in the yard going up and down this driveway. We get to the house and she ends up telling me as we're sitting in this person's bathroom that she uses drugs intravenously, and that if I wanted to get high, that's how I was going to have to use it, because at this point she had already started, how can I say this on YouTube? She had already started the process to where there's no turning back. Like there's no way for me to do this drug at this point unless it is that way. And in my mind, when she was setting everything up, which I'm not going to get into detail about, but there was a can involved, there was alcohol involved, like rubbing alcohol. At first I thought, well, maybe she's going to do hers up her nose. We'll say it that way. I didn't know what she was doing. It didn't click in my mind. I was so naive to it at this point. I knew no one who did things this way. So I was just so confused. And then when she finally told me, and she had like a package in her purse of brand new like diabetic needles, and she tells me, I'm like, oh my God, like I'm scared to death of shots. And she says, no, I'll take care of it for you. You're fine. Now, I, in that moment, made the decision to do it. I was an addict. I made this decision. And by no means am I blaming my addiction or where my addiction got to on this person. I'm just telling you guys the story. But in no way is this me blaming Cindy for starting to use Opanas and harder drugs and also using drugs intravenously. This is just a premise to how me and Cindy got to where we got at this point. So me and Cindy start running together every single day. Every single day we start running together. We start laying out of our jobs. Like it gets to the point to where we're not going to work anymore. Like I would go to work, but Cindy would spend all day looking for drugs, and I would be left waiting outside of my job for like 3 hours on Cindy to come pick me up. I had no cell phone. There was nothing. Like we were working tip jobs. So we were making tips, and all those tips were being spent on drugs. Also, Cindy had an apartment that we were living in, but we weren't paying for. And every time that this landlord would ask for rent, there would always be this excuse given out like, oh yeah, you know, we'll get to it. We're getting there, blah, 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 blah. Eventually things start getting really, really bad. And I start getting a person to paying our rent for a few months, plus the rest of our bills, so that we can kind of get back on our feet. And I have this conversation with Cindy, and I'm like, listen, I'm not going to have anybody else to pay these bills. We're going to have to get it together. Like at this point, my drug addiction had went from maybe a 2 to a full on 10, like in a matter of a couple of weeks. All of the money that I had was completely gone. My car at this point was gone. This is when shit was going downhill. So Cindy, this day that we have this conversation, and I'm like, listen, we're going to need to like get our shit together. Like this is getting really bad. Like, I don't know, we're not going to have a place to live or anything if we continue on this path that we're on. She ends up going to Walmart. I ride with her. We go to Walmart. This would happen a couple of times a week for about 2 months. And every time that she would go inside Walmart, she had told me that a family member of hers worked inside of Walmart and she was going to borrow money. I would just sit out in the car, wait on her, and we would leave. She would get money. That is what I thought. Fast forward. So Cindy ends up getting in trouble. She was on probation. She ends up going to jail. About 2 years after this, I end up getting calls from my family saying that the family member that I had lived with around the time that me and Cindy were running together, like right before she and I just started living together and spending every single moment together, I was living with the family member, and this family member calls me and says, hey, the police came by the house today and they're asking for you. I was like, what? I was petrified. I've never, knock on wood, been in trouble in my life. My record is completely clean. I never, ever, never have gotten in any trouble, no speeding ticket, nothing. I was so scared. Then one of my roommates, one of my horrible roommates that I didn't leave on a good foot with, ends up giving me a call being like, Morgan, the police just came by, because she continued to live in one of the places that we had together. She ends up calling me saying, hey, the police just came by and they're looking for you. I was scared to death. So eventually, a few days later, there's a knock at the door and it's the police. And they say that they need to have a chat with me and that there were video footage of Cindy going inside of Walmart, and what she was doing was she was stealing things, then going up to the customer service counter and getting money back. I would never have the balls. Like, when I was in my addiction, I was so fucking paranoid. People would try to talk me into doing that shit all the time, and I would not do it. I was way too scared. But it all just started to make sense, and I'm telling this officer, like, listen, like, no, she told me that a family member worked there. Like, you must have something confused. And this officer's like, no, we have it on camera. Like, all of this is filmed. There has been thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars stolen from this Walmart. And then he tells me of this other situation. Now, let me just say, this is what the situation looked to me in the moment. So like I said, I had lost my car. This in particular day, Cindy calls her grandfather, which is who she lived with, like, when she wasn't on drugs, because he wouldn't let her live there when she was high. She called her grandfather, and her grandfather had had her car in a mechanic shop for months, and basically said, Cindy, when you want your car, you'll pay for it to have it taken out. I'm not paying for it to get out of the shop. So this one in particular Sunday, I remember it plain as day, Cindy texted me and said, hey, I just got off the phone with my grandpa. He has gotten my car out of the shop. So can you see if you can borrow a friend of mine? It was a friend of mine's car, and we'll go up there and pick up my car and you can follow me. I said, of course. So I call this person in my life and I'm like, hey, can I borrow your car to go pick up Cindy's car, blah, blah, blah. I'll bring it back to you. They were like, yeah, of course. So we go, she goes inside, comes out with her car, and we leave. Not only that, but the freaking mechanic stood out in the driveway and like waved. So I waved back. Nothing looked sus. Everything looked completely normal. This officer then tells me that that day she got a theft of services charge. They weren't, like, she didn't pay for the car. She had talked them into letting her test drive it before she paid the money to make sure that it was running. Like, she had told this mechanic, I knew none of this shit. So this officer is like, do you have any text or anything to prove what you're saying? And I said, of course I do. So I pull up my Facebook Messenger and I'm showing this officer, like, here, this is her saying that, you know, hey, I'm going to come home, pick you up, and then I'm going to run Walmart and see Aunt so-and-so. Like, she made up a whole ass relative, an aunt at Walmart. And I would say, okay, cool. And she'd say, do you want to ride with me? I'd say, sure. There was the text of the day that she was like, hey, I called my grandpa. He was like, he's going to pay for my car to get out of the shop. Will you drive me up there? So essentially these officers are like, oh my gosh, like, you're so lucky that you had these messages, because if not, you would have been accessory to all of this. I was like, excuse me? He said, yes. He said, and from what I can tell, you need to continue on the same path that you're on, because you just got yourself out of 20 years plus in prison. And you guys, that whole conversation was literally days before I got sober. Days before I got sober. That whole situation literally scared me straight, because I had no idea that this girl was doing this stuff. And it was like every time, and whether or not you believe in God or not, this is all just to say, for me, it is God. I believe wholeheartedly in God and the universe, and God protected me in so many instances. There were so many fucking times where people were doing shady shit, and I honestly, to God, thought another situation. I was always that fucking addict that was like, fuck that, I'm not doing that, I would rather be sick, I don't want to do that. Always. You can ask anyone who ran with me at that time. I wasn't with the shits. I wasn't. I was very naive. It wasn't really, that lifestyle wasn't for me at all. I'm just like so naive and blind to the world that I really just didn't see anything wrong with what she was doing. Like, everything made made sense to me. And I contribute everything in me being protected to God. I sincerely thank God every single day. I thank him right now for protecting me during that time and allowing me to get sober and live this beautiful life that I get to live now, because I am truly, truly so blessed that that was the case for me. Anyways, I hope this conversation and this story does help someone. If you or your friend, if you're running with someone and they're doing some sketchy stuff where it doesn't feel right, it's not right, get yourself out of the situation. If you yourself or someone you know is in an addiction situation, I'm gonna have numbers down in the description box for you to call and get yourself some help. Also, if you are a family member of someone who is in their addiction, I'm going to give you guys a recommendation to Al-Anon. You will need to look up in your area of where Al-Anon meetings are held, but Al-Anon is for the family of people in addiction. It does help you see a little bit clearer what it is that they're going through, and it helps you and is therapy for you to be able to talk about how you're feeling. I send to all of you guys love. I'm so glad to be back. I'm so sorry that I was gone for so long. I will be getting my bottom teeth done in March or April of next year, so I'm going to document all of that as well. I love you guys. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me today, and until the very next time, be sure you subscribe. Bye.